Hi guys, welcome to the Tiny Book Tuesday live stream here on Stoneburner Books YouTube channel. I want to show you some stuff today. I've been making tiny books for 5 or 6 years now, I think, as part of my work. And most of them, I just enjoy making them and take lots of photos of them and then pass them on to somebody else. And I have a small collection of ones that I've made that I just can't bear to part with. So I want to take you through and show you some of those and tell you some of the stories about why I made them or why I don't want to pass them on, how I chose what papers I used and things like that. So I'm going to show you those items. And then I also have a couple that are actually for sale. So I'll show you those too. But let's see. I'm going to start with probably one of my oldest ones. This is a little teeny one. This is a spine here. It's maroon spine cloth. And tons of little teeny signatures make up the pages there. And then I use this marbled paper. If I remember correctly, this is marbled by Gemma Lewis out of the UK. And this one measures just an inch tall and about 3/4 of an inch thick. So this one, this one I created a couple of them using the same paper and spine cloth and made like a very small batch of maybe 3 to 5. These I made several years ago. When I first started bookbinding, I actually was working as a preservation librarian, and something about this marbled paper and spine color really just like reminded me of the collection I was working in. That collection started in 1826, I think. And they had tons and tons of books that were bound together specifically for, it was a law library. So they were bound together as part of the collection. And so it would have, beautiful marbled paper either on the covers or on the end sheets. And so I kind of made these little teeny tiny books as not necessarily a tribute to my previous work in that library, but just kind of as a reminder. So that's the first little itty bitty one. Then I've got to figure out how to show you this. The next one I'm going to show you is a project that I did for the Are You Book Enough challenge. And this is something that's just like an Instagram challenge. I haven't done it in a while, but it is still going on. And the challenge, I believe the topic that month was hexagon. And so I made this little teeny, it's a little bee library, like it's a play on words of the little free library. And so the structure itself is made out of bookboard, and then it is covered in book cloth on the edges. And then it has this cool little, like, it's almost waxy paper in the back. And then there's also decorative paper on the inside of the honeycomb that you can see. So I was doing a play on the little free libraries, thinking what would a bee have in their little free libraries if they had them. So I made my own little bee library, and then I made five different little books. Each one has a different binding. So I'm going to take them out one at a time. So this one is just a simple staple binding, and it's called Mind Your Beeswax, jokes for worker bees. And I think I did actually put a joke in there. Let's see. Oh, this one, this joke was kind of like my son came up with it. It's maybe, uh, it's a joke that a kid would say probably. What did Will say when the bee came buzzing around? Hey, bee, why don't you just punch me in the face? Maybe not that most sensical of jokes, but there we go. We've got that little joke book. Then next to that one, we have this one, which is kind of like a perfect binding. and it's called The Sting of Death. And I kind of just envisioned this one as a murder mystery. It doesn't have anything on the inside, but I just liked that. I wanted to include like a mystery. This next little one is a teeny tiny chain stitch. Um, and it's called The Beekeeper's Wife. So this is kind of like a romance, you know, or historical fiction, maybe. What if they would read that? Again, nothing on the inside. The inside is just a little sewn binding there. Then this one is another case binding like the one I just showed you, with marbled paper on the outside and a navy blue spine cloth. And this one is even a little bit smaller than the other one that I made. And this one's called Bees, a History. So this is kind of like the encyclopedia of bee history. And then the last little book here is called 101 Uses for Beeswax. And this one just has a little bit of binder's thread to hold it together. And then you open it up and it's a little accordion pop out that has some of the 101 uses. So 1, condition a wood cutting board. 42, unstick a wooden drawer with a coating of beeswax on the wooden rails. 88, lubricate screws. 101, repair frayed ropes. So that one has some like little information in it too. But I tried to highlight different types of bindings, and as well as different categories of what would be in a bee library. So that one was really fun to make. And it was, it was just a fun challenge. That's why I like the Are You Book Enough challenge, because it is just something for you to, just a prompt for you to, get creative with it. So that was kind of the biggest project for multiple different ones. And then let's see, I'll show you this one. This one is kind of one that I decided I wanted to keep. I've made a lot like this with the marbled paper. This is marbled paper that I made myself. And then just kind of the case binding. I'll show you this one. I like it as an example. But if you look, you can see there's just way too much space. I made the spine cloth a little bit too big. So that one's definitely not going to get sold, but this one is one that I like to keep as an example. It's got lots of teeny tiny pages, and you can actually see, let's see if I can get the camera to pick it up. You can, because there's so much space in here, you can see inside really well. So it's a good little example book of tiny book binding. So I really enjoy making these little ones. And part of the reason I started is because I have so many paper scraps that, I try to use as much of the sheet of paper as possible, but there's often just a little teeny strip of paper left. And I hate to just recycle perfectly good paper. So that's usually where a lot of these come into play. And so these 3 are the ones that are very similar to that. They're all covered in book cloth, full book cloth covers. And you can see that spine. This is how much space should be behind on that spine. So it allows it to open nicely, but it doesn't, pop out too much. So I have one in black, one in tan, like a natural linen color, and one in the olive green. And these are, I don't know, there's something so satisfying about this like chunky little book. These are all just a little, like an 1.25 inches tall and just over a 1/2 inch thick. So it's just like a nice little chunky size. When I was a kid, I had I think they're called like thumb Bibles, but it's a teeny tiny Bible that's like this size. And I think that just left a lasting impression on me, that you could have a little teeny book this size. And I really love, it's very satisfying. So I have those 3, and I'll show you the very last one that I made this summer. Actually, I made it into a necklace, and when I was at the beach, I found these 2 little shells that already had holes in them. Let's see how I can show you. I don't know if you can see. They already had little holes there at the top. Um, and I knew I wanted to make this into a necklace. So I traced the shells and made the little pages. These are all just a single sheet. So the binding is kind of using this jump ring as the binding. And I love this one. It's nice long necklace. So it would kind of hit like about here or so. But this is one that I have to keep. If I go to the beach this summer, I will probably get more shells, look for more shells to make another one like this. But I just thought this was so fun. You could put, words that you want to remember there, or I don't know what you could write in there, but something you want to keep close to your heart. But those are just a couple things that I have, the tiny books that I like to keep. It is sometimes hard to get rid of them, or not get rid of them, sell them, and let them go out into the world. But I know there's so many people who enjoy them, and so I like to, share the wealth basically. If you have questions about tiny books, I'm happy to stay on for a couple more minutes and chat and about tiny books. Um, I have some specialty tools. Actually, before I get into that, I'll just say if you have questions, just put them into the chat. I can see the chat, and I'm happy to answer anything. Sharon, thank you for your comment. That is a very nice comment. I love little teeny tiny things as well. So I really love making these books. So if you want to put questions in, I'm happy to chat about, teeny tiny books and the process and all of that. So one thing that I discovered because the process starts with making this text block in here. So usually I have long strips of paper. So I have a whole drawer down here that I'm going to just pull randomly. Like, if you need a strip of paper, I can get you a strip of paper like in 2 seconds flat. So these are just offcuts from a larger project. I think these are from 8.5 by 11, or not 8.5 by 11, 11 by 17 or 12 by 18 inch pieces of paper. So I was making a larger book, and then I had these little extra bits. So I hate to throw these away because I know that I can make book pages out of these. So it really starts as, extra strips of paper that I just don't want to get rid of. I cut them down and then fold every single piece. That is something that, depending on the day, it can be incredibly tedious to fold all those pages. But usually I find it really satisfying to fold all the little teeny pages. And I like to lay them out all on my cutting mat so I can see how many I have and put them into the bundles for the signatures. But it is really satisfying to have all these little teeny tiny pages. So I have to be in the right mood to do it. And then I put them into press, and then I start to sew them. And I actually had to create a special needle. Let me get this. Oh, Sharon has a question of, do you use any different supplies? So needles, thread, etc. So this will answer your question. So I have it's just saved here in my curved needle for tiny books. I had to make this. It is a regular curved needle, but then that little teeny bend in the needle itself, that's how I'm able to sew the signatures into their bindings, because the pages all get sewn together first. And usually, even in something this small, I'll have 3 or 4 holes along the spine. And with curved needles, normally you have to, sew, and the curve helps bring it up through from underneath the chain of stitches that you're building up. But with these, they're so the spine is so short that with a regular needle, depending on how small you're working, it will hit into or go under the next set of stitches. So I had to create this teeny tiny curve in the needle so that it will go under and then immediately come back up. And not hit the next row of stitches. So this is something that I use, and it came out of necessity. I started sewing them and realized like I can't, after a couple signatures are on there, I can't get it underneath and the way that it needs to be. One other thing that I use as well is a much thinner linen thread. So this one it's, I mean, it doesn't look that thin right there, but let me show you another. My typical waxed linen thread is much thicker. And so let's see if you can see. So this is my typical waxed linen thread. And then this is the stuff that I use for, still looks pretty darn thick on there, but it's much thicker. It's probably about the half the thickness of the black. And I really like this one. It is unwaxed, but I wax it myself. And I like it because it's really strong and but it is delicate. So you can work with it on a small scale. The wax linen thread that I typically use, it could definitely, I've used it on small books before, maybe not anything this teeny tiny, because it's just a little bulky. When you're working this small, it's a little bit bulky. I'm trying to think, what did I use on this? Yeah, see this little teeny sewn binding. This is actually just probably, it's either cotton thread for sewing, like for hand sewing, or embroidery floss. I can't tell right now. I think it looks a little thin for embroidery floss. So I bet that it's just regular cotton thread for hand sewing. So when you're working small, there are different, you might want a thinner weight of the thread. All right, I saw another. All right, to use Coptic binding to create the block in a case binding. No, I don't. I don't know what it's called. I think it's just called a case binding. I don't know exactly what it's called. But the binding is slightly different. So you want to use, with Coptic binding, you often, if you're using multiple needles, you want to use an even number of holes. But with the cased binding, you want to use an odd number of holes in each signature. And the result looks very similar to a Coptic binding. I think, I'm wondering, I know I have one that I made years ago and then just glued covers on it. And I'm wondering if I can find it. Hold that thought. Let me see if I can find it right here. Okay. All right. So I actually found two, but this one will be better to see it. Okay. So this is what it looks like. Hold on. I've got it all bound up here. Okay. So this is what it looks like when it's just sewn inside. So this, it kind of looks like a Coptic binding. You can see here where where they zigzag. I didn't punch all my holes in a straight line. So that's why they zigzag right there in the middle. But if you look up here at the top, see how there's thread coming across each from each station here? That shows that this, I know I can look right at this and know that it was a cased binding, that I just didn't cover up the spine. So this one, you can see it makes those similar braids on the central columns. The sides are a little bit different, but it does look very similar to that. And so this is a good example of how it works. And then I just glued a hard cover onto that first page in the first signature and the last signature. So this one's a little bit different. This was when I was still learning this binding. And so that's what this is. I see your comment about a link stitch. Link stitch is a little bit different. It's kind of similar to this one. Um, I know I did one of these, a link stitch a while ago too, but link stitch, if I remember correctly, it actually like crosses the threads at a couple of the stations. It's been a really long time since I've done link stitch, and I liked it. And I should probably go back to it now that I have better practice with doing stuff like Coptic. I had been doing case bindings for so long, and then I wanted to try some more just hand sewn stuff. And so that's kind of like the era that I was getting into with this and the link stitch. And then I kind of settled on Coptic binding. Like I went all in on learning how to do it and really practicing on that. So um, I should go back to link stitch and try it again now that I have a lot more hours under my belt for hand stitching. And then this one's just that same type of thing again. I don't really even remember making this one, but it's just made out of paper bags. I was probably just practicing. I mean, this is another thing that I talk about a lot of just use what you have and practice. So you get a feel for it, use whatever you have. Look at this. I started a little junk journal in this one. Okay, I do remember this now because this was like summer of 2021, I think. And I was marbling paper a lot. And what was this? I'm not sure if I remember. Oh, I think I cut up an old farmer's almanac, and that's what these are from. And I had ambitions to have a junk journal, like travel journal for that summer. But this is as far as I got, which is pretty par for the course for me. Is like I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that, and then I never finish with my journaling. So I'm very impressed when people are all in on their journaling all the time. I'm much more interested in the creative process of making the journals, and then do a little bit of the collage here and there. But okay, let's see. So I don't see any other questions, I don't think. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have, other questions or comments that pop up, you feel free to put them in the comments below. I did put a link in the description to these little ones that are available if you feel like you need to have a little teeny tiny book in your life. I have a couple of those available. But I'm also, if you have other ideas of like things that you'd like to see around the studio, I'm happy to, or have me like live chat about, let me know. I thought this was a good one because I rarely show these little teeny tiny books. I kind of show it when they are made, and then they kind of just live on my shelf after that. And I see these every single day. I have like a little, you probably saw the bottom of it. Oh, let's see if I can pick it up without knocking everything over. So I have like a little, I think these are called a cloche. But so to keep all of them from getting dusty. So I see this every day. But I thought I would share in case you missed it originally, first go round. So I hope that was interesting. And if you have other questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you soon. Bye.